Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football with Ryan Skolrud, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth, Morgan Roth, and Rick Curti joins us tonight. Rick, glad to have you on the broadcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So anyways, let's go ahead and before we get this thing going, I want to start off on a somber note, if I may. I want to pass on my deepest condolences to my brother-in-law, Todd Shepik, and his wife, Marie, and Dawn Shepik, as well as her husband, Rob, and, of course, Wayne Shepik, as Jill Shepik passed away. So they're very great people, and it's unfortunate that Alzheimer's got the best of a woman. Wayne and Jill were married 51 years, two of the finest people to ever meet. So my deepest condolences out to the Shepik family. Rest in peace and prayers to all of you there. So before we get this thing going, I want to get it out of the way right away and know that we're thinking about you here on the network, and you're always in our hearts and in your minds. With that said, guys, ready for some Thursday night football?
Yes.
All right, Ryan, you got why don't you give our fantasy people something to work with? What do you got?
Well, to start it off, Philip Lindsay has not been practicing. Looks like the injury that he sustained in the Monday night game originally has been called turf toe. He went for a second opinion. I have not heard anything different on that not being turf toe. So it looks like that's the injury that he's dealing with. It's probably going to be a couple of weeks. So in the meantime, this is basically going to be Melvin Gordon's backfield for the Denver Broncos. And so definitely it'll be interesting to see what Melvin Gordon can do this next week. I believe I'm pretty sure that that the Broncos have Pittsburgh, I believe, coming up, and they did a very good job of containing Saquon Barkley in the run game. So it'll be interesting to see what if anything can get going for Melvin Gordon coming up this next weekend. Michael Thomas is not going on IR yet. I don't think he will. But the possibility remains open. The deal with Michael Thomas is he had a high ankle sprain in the fourth quarter of the game against Tampa Bay. A lot of people were wondering why, with how far ahead they were, why Michael Thomas was even still in the game. That being said, it looks like dealing with a high ankle sprain, the possibility of him going on IR this season actually was pretty good, simply because of the fact that in this COVID-shortened season, they actually have a 3-week minimum on the injured reserve, which would give him, most high ankle sprains can be anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, depending on how severe. And so putting him on IR, which I don't think he's going to play this next week, so that's going to really boost up Emmanuel Sanders. A lot of people are saying Jared Cook. I'm not totally sold on thinking that Jared Cook is going to benefit from this. Jared Cook has had a hard time producing consistently since he went to the Saints. And so I'm not buying the Jared Cook hype for this week. I think that Emmanuel Sanders will get a fair amount of work. Traquan Smith may also get a little bit of work this week too. As far as owners of Michael Thomas, I've seen a lot of people already trading him in redraft leagues. If you're in a dynasty league, I would hold on to him. There's no sense in trading him. But in redraft leagues, I understand there are some people trading him. I would not this is Michael Thomas. I would not take anything less than a high-end wide receiver 2 and a low-end running back 1 if I'm trading away Michael Thomas from my team. So I think that Michael Thomas likely will stay off of injured reserve, but the fact that it's a possibility with IR being only 3 weeks is something to keep in mind in terms of watching your fantasy rosters moving forward. Chris Godwin is not practicing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is still in the concussion protocol from the game last week. And there's a couple things to look at here. Mike Evans did not get a whole lot of work in last week's game. They somewhat had him on a pitch count. They wanted to be careful with his hamstring injury not to run him on too many deep routes. That I think that his hamstring has gotten to the point where he's going to be okay. He should be at 100% this week. Chris Godwin does a lot of work, not only outside, but also in the slot. And so because of that, one of the guys that I'm really looking at getting a boost this week if Godwin can't play is going to be, I believe it's Scotty Miller, I think is his last name. Checking that again real quick. Got my notes right here. And simply because he very much fits the Julian Edelman type of role. He's little, works well in the slot, runs crisp routes. Yeah, Scotty Miller. He very much fits that mold. If you look at how he did in the game on Sunday, he finished with, I want to say it was 6 targets, 5 catches for 73 yards. And in a team that also has Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, you have your third receiver still finishing with almost 75 yards on 6 targets. I think that if Godwin goes down, Miller's going to be the safety blanket for Tom Brady, and so it's going to make it for a really good pickup in terms of PPR leagues, a guy to play in that flex spot. Tampa Bay's going up against Carolina, and Carolina really struggled this last week, stopping all aspects of the game, whether it was the running game or the passing game. So I think that Evans should be in for a good week if Godwin doesn't go. And at this week, I'm not counting on Godwin. If he's still not practicing, I'm not counting on Godwin playing this weekend. And so I think that Scotty Miller would be a solid pickup. If you're playing a daily fantasy, I think that Scotty Miller is going to be a great value play. He's going to be really cheap on DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo DFS for people to pick up and use in their lineups. Moving on, Benny Snell could be used a lot more in the lineup, whether James Conner is healthy or not. Here's the deal with Benny Snell. He played so well when Conner went out end of the first half last week. Snell ended up running for, I want to say it was 119 yards. Let me pull it up. Yeah, 113 yards on 19 carries. Averaging almost 6 yards a carry, was really running the ball well, finding gaps, finding the holes well. He was finding gaps better than Conner was. So Conner practiced fully today with his ankle injury. So it looks like he is still going to be available this weekend. However, Benny Snell is already going to start eating into that production. Now, I wouldn't go too serious into having Benny Snell start this week as your running back too. I'd maybe have him as a flex play if you have some starter issues because of injury. Looking back, the Denver Broncos held Derrick Henry to what was like 3 yards a carry. I think Derrick Henry ran for 130 yards, but he also carried the ball 30 plus times. So Henry was not able to break off big runs. The defense for the Denver Broncos was able to do a pretty good job of swarming to the ball in the run game, and so I'm not counting on Benny Snell to put up that much more production than Derrick Henry. It's possible, just not something I'm counting on. So I think that Benny Snell will get more play, but I think it would take James Conner getting injured for multiple weeks for Benny Snell to be a guy that I would be confident in having as like my running back 2 in a lineup during the week. Miles Sanders is back to practicing in full. That being said, he's another guy that I'm cautious about with the injuries on the Philadelphia line. There was so so much trouble for the run game for Philadelphia. I mean, yeah, it was Boston Scott and Corey Clement. I think between the two of them, they had about 23 touches. Couldn't really do much with them. Boston Scott even got injured in that game. Was able to come back, but the offensive line is not all that healthy right now for Philadelphia, and so it makes me caution a little bit having Miles Sanders back in that running back 2 role. There was so much hype around him in the preseason, because he was going to be the guy. I still think that's the case. He's still going to be the guy in Philadelphia, but the offensive line gives me some trepidation in terms of what he's going to be able to do. So for right now, I would maybe only play him as, say, a flex in like a 10 or 12 team league. I wouldn't have him unless you're playing in a 14, 16, or 18 team league, which I play in a 16 and 18. I don't want Miles Sanders anywhere near my running back 2 or running back 1 spot. So okay. I think that he's a solid flex play for now until we can kind of see what happens with that Philadelphia offensive line. And finally, the last thing that I've got going in my notes here is that George Kittle has not been practicing yet. He still expects to play this next week for the 49ers. So as far as Jimmy Garoppolo goes, he's going to need all of the help he can get in terms of receiving options. And really, because I don't think after watching what Garoppolo last couple of years, I do not feel that Garoppolo is all that great of a quarterback overall. I think he's a good kind of I hate the term, but I think he's a good game manager. I think he can do just enough to keep his defense in games. And so, as long as George Kittle is healthy, you're going to start him and roll him out there. So.
Okay, let me go over some observations. Rick, that's where you can voice an opinion or two. Let's go over the Philip Lindsay situation. Melvin Gordon had a nice debut for the Broncos. Melvin Gordon, 15 rushes, 78 yards, and a touchdown. And he had a long, I believe, of 25 yards. So Melvin Gordon had no trouble getting used to his new confines in the Mile Highs, playing for the Broncos for sure. So what do you think, Rick, about Melvin Gordon's new home out in Denver?
Well, we'll see what he does, We'll see if he can play well and, if he can have a big game. So it'll be very, very interesting what he can do there.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon's a good quality running back. If I were on a fantasy team this year, I took the year off because of COVID-19, I would certainly love to have Melvin Gordon on my roster. He's a multi-purpose back, who can be a threat out of the backfield. In fact, on Sunday he had 3 receptions for another 8 yards. But the thing about him is he's a hybrid running back, and, Wisconsin produces a lot of good running backs, and there's no question that Melvin Gordon is one of those. And Emmanuel Sanders was a good pickup, though, Ryan. I really think he was. So even with Thomas dealing with some medical issues, I would definitely think that you couldn't ask for a much better insurance policy, could you, Ryan?
No, I think he's a really solid player. I think he's the best number 2 wide receiver that has been behind Michael Thomas since Michael Thomas's first year in the league. Because he's had Ted Ginn really is his number 2, and Ted Ginn basically was one thing. He was a deep ball specialist. That was it. That's all he was known for. And while he had some semi-productive years and had some games where he could really play well in that New Orleans offense and set things up, really pull defenses back to set things up for Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders is a little more dynamic. Even after coming back from, the Achilles tear or whatever it was from a couple years ago, I think that Emmanuel Sanders he's the better player overall. And so I think that Sanders will be very productive in this offense if he's got to take over the number 1 role while Michael Thomas is out.
Any thoughts, Rick, about Emmanuel Sanders?
Well, he's a very good player, and we'll see how productive he can be. It's very, very early. We don't know. It's just a very early season right now, but he's been a very productive player, so I expect a good game from him.
Yeah, he is. I mean, Now, Ryan, go into more detail about Mike Evans' that pitch count.
Sorry, you kind of just a little bit. What was that again?
Yeah, the pitch count for Mike Evans. You say he's going to be ready to go full force?
Yeah, at this point, it's looking like he's going to be ready to go full force. He was on a little bit of a pitch count last week. They said basically because he was coming off the hamstring injury, they wanted to be very careful about his usage going, running deep routes, and just going full force running deep routes that way. It looks like they have kind of toned down, that language going into this next week. And so he should be fully ready to go full strength, for the game Sunday. And so he should be in for, especially if Godwin is out, Evans should be in for a really good game on Sunday.
Now, didn't the 49ers sign Mohamed Sanu? Did I hear that?
They did sign Mohamed Sanu. It helps with some of the injury issues that they've been dealing with. They had Brandon Ayuk, who was injured. He was back to practicing full today. I'm trying to think. I can't remember. They've got Deebo Samuel, who's still on IR. He still can't come back until at least week 4. And it may still be longer than that. So yeah, I think that Sanu is a good wide receiver 3. And so in the offense for the 49ers, he is familiar with the offense because he played for Shanahan down in Atlanta. And so I think that helps, that he's familiar with the offense and should be able to, I think Sanu is a solid slot guy that should be able to help some production there. And maybe even draw a little coverage off of George Kittle in some of the lower routes. But I mean, as far as fantasy goes, I'm not putting much stock in Mohamed Sanu.
Well, you talk about familiarity factor. That's indeed what went into it. And we should point out, too, okay, that familiarity factor went into the signing of Adrian Peterson, who reunited with Darrell Bevel with the Lions. And I got to tell you, though, Adrian Peterson had a pretty good game for the Lions, didn't he, Ryan?
He did. I was actually quite surprised with how well Peterson was able to run the ball in that game, especially against the Chicago defense. It's been pretty stout for the most part the last few years. But yeah, Peterson, just what he was able to do in that game on Sunday, 14 carries for 93 yards. He was averaging over 6 yards a carry. He looked a little bit like the old Adrian Peterson. And again, some of that may have been just familiarity with the offense from Darrell Bevel. But I think that I would be cautious to think that that's going to keep going. Especially at his age. But that being said, I still think I think that he could provide some flex value. They're going up against Green Bay this week, and Green Bay is kind of a back and forth defense on whether or not they're actually going to play well against the run or not. So I don't necessarily like him for this weekend, but there are worse plays that you could have, worse players you could have going for you this week. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with Adrian Peterson this last weekend.
Yeah, the Lions struggle to have 100-yard running backs, so just so you know, the Green Bay Packers, Detroit Lions is a battle of Morgan Ross. Myself and Candy, just so you know, so it's going to be a very interesting week in the Morgan Ross household. We've had a lot of interesting games within us since we've known each other for a long time. I have a feeling this one won't be any different. So, Rick, what are your thoughts about Adrian Peterson? I didn't even think about it. The guy went out there, nearly got 100 yards in his first outing with the Lions, and the Lions struggled to produce 100-yard backs, and Adrian nearly pulled the trick and had over 100 all-purpose yards. But what do you think about Adrian Peterson, Rick?
Hey, I agree with Ryan. I was surprised, too. I thought he would kind of struggle a little bit. He's getting older now, slowing down, but he looked pretty good, and it's about time the Lions had a great running back. They haven't had a great running back since some guy named Barry Sanders, so I was surprised by that, but I don't, I think with Green Bay is kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde team. Sometimes they look terrific, like last week, and other times their defense looks terrible. I have a big question mark on Green Bay, but I will be very, very surprised if Adrian Peterson does have a big game against them. But he looked really good. So who knows?
Okay, well, I'll go over some other notes here. All right, rapid fire. Ready? First of all, I have a question for all of you guys. Why are the Cincinnati Bengals versus Cleveland Browns playing in prime time? Obviously, we know the Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow factor. And by the way, Sam Weiss isn't walking through that door. We can insult the Cleveland fans, okay? So, I don't know. This game is a weekend in prime time tonight? Seriously?
Yes, actually the reason for it is because the NFL was started in Canton, Ohio. The NFL's official 100th birthday is today. And so that was, I think, part of the reason behind putting the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns in tonight's primetime game.
Well, now that's
they want to see how bad Baker does because now he's like really on that short leash right now, and they said that there's a lot of pressure on Baker. So I think it's like the drama factor, how the Browns are going to do, and there's rumor that they're trading Odell Beckham.
Okay. Well, you know what, though, Brian? I got to tell you, it's the best explanation I've gotten all day. The 100th birthday, Canton, Ohio, Battle of Ohio. Now that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, Odell Beckham, who knows where he's going to wind up next? Who knows? His act has gotten old pretty quick. He hasn't even had a 100-yard game, around 11 games? Is that right, Ryan? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah, Odell Beckham to me. But okay, so that's the major reason, 100th birthday, Canton, Ohio, the Ohio twist. So, all right, let's talk about Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow. On the Sports Exchange, I actually predicted Cincinnati would win the game against Cleveland 24-20, whereas Mel Farr and Xavier McKnight opted to go with Cleveland. So I'm going to put both of you guys on the spot for a prediction. Rick, who do you got in that game?
I'm going to go with Cincinnati. I mean, both teams are not very good.
Right.
But Cleveland is just a train wreck.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they can have, Vince Lombardi's not coming back or Bill Walsh is not going to come and coach them. I mean, they're just a mess. They're probably the worst sports franchise ever. And I have no faith in Baker Mayfield at all. I think he's going to be a bust, or he might be already. And Odell Beckham, I'm not surprised with all his drama there that they want to get rid of him. And they have a rookie coach. I'm going to go with Cincinnati, but it's going to be an ugly game.
Yeah, what about the upside of Joe Burrow? I mean, he didn't do that badly his first game, obviously, especially a rookie quarterback that could have used preseason. But it was his first outing. I'm sure that there's a tremendous amount of upside for Joe, the franchise Burrow, out in Cincinnati.
I don't know. I don't like this game. I actually had a buddy ask if I'm kind of his informant in terms of the NFL, and he actually asked me. He goes, I like Cincinnati, plus the 6 points tonight. Should I put a few bucks down? I go, I'm horrible with point spreads, and this is one of those games where both teams are terrible, so I don't know which way it's going to go. I have no clue. I think I'll maybe say I think the Browns have a better coach. I like Stefanski. I loved him as an offensive coordinator. I think that he has, obviously, in my opinion, he has more weapons to use. But I mean, that's the only thing it's those two factors are the only things kind of pushing to me that it could be the Browns winning tonight.
Fair enough. Okay. So, question: do you have a problem with Bruce Arians calling out Tom Brady in the media? Rick?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that happened. I mean, is the honeymoon already over? I mean, Tom Brady didn't play great, but you got to remember he's like in his 40s, and he's not the Tom Brady of old. But yeah, I was kind of surprised that he did that. Since everybody's all in love with him, and Arians is like a quarterback, whisperer kind of guy, and for him to call him out that early, kind of threw Tom Brady under the bus. I'm very surprised he did that.
Yeah, Brett Favre didn't think it was a good idea. He figured that it would have been better off to have Brady had to deal with it in the building, which he did so many times with Bill Belichick. But what are your thoughts, Ryan?
It doesn't surprise me. This is Bruce Arians. He doesn't care what anyone else thinks. He's going to say what he thinks. And so I'm not surprised that it happened. He even came back and said that he and Tom Brady talked about it. They dealt with it, and Tom Brady's a big boy and can handle it, and he's handled it fine. And even with Brett Favre, calling him out and saying, with Brett Favre saying you're barking up the wrong tree, Bruce Arians said, I don't care. You think what you want. I'm the head coach. Yeah. So, this is Bruce Arians. I mean, I'm used to this from Bruce Arians being in Seattle, where he was coaching the Arizona Cardinals, who just had this propensity for beating Seattle in Seattle, 4 out of 5 years. This is nothing new to me. So I'm very much used to this. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
Okay, let's talk about. I know that Rick Curti was very adamant about the New York Mets when we talked about the baseball show.
The New York Mets.
Yeah, I know. That's where I'm leading here. Okay, so now we have another New York mess. This one's with the Jets, however. Le'Veon Bell's on injured reserve with a hamstring injury. Adam Gase regretted putting him back on the field while he was hurt. Ryan, you know what? You're in the fantasy business, right? Okay. What are your thoughts about the way Adam Gase mishandled the situation with Le'Veon Bell?
I mean, this is typical Adam Gase, in my opinion. He wasn't. I don't like Adam Gase as a head coach. I think he is an okay offensive mind, but in terms of a personnel guy, he is not my favorite at all. I think that he hasn't gone into great situations. Obviously, going into Miami and then going from Miami to the New York Jets. But that being said, I don't think he handles personnel well. And as far as Le'Veon Bell goes, if Le'Veon Bell's saying he wants back in, Le'Veon Bell's he's a professional who's been doing this for years. And if Le'Veon Bell's saying he wants back in, and says he's okay, then fine, run him out there.
Okay.
I'm just not a fan of Adam Gase. I don't think he's a good head coach just in general. So, while he may have bungled this, at the same time, I think that there were probably other factors at play that made this come to it. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, Adam Gase got run out of Miami with the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins definitely made a good move when they let him go. I really do believe that Brian Flores is a heck of a coach, and he will produce victories in time once they're able to get that roster turnover and get the type of players that Brian Flores wants. So I totally agree with you there, Ryan. So meanwhile, the NFL had 7 positive virus tests from September 6th to the 12th. Are you still in single digits? Does this number get worse as time goes on?
Possibly, I don't know. It all depends on how well the players, stick to the protocols in terms of staying in when they're visiting, the visiting team staying in team hotels, staying within the parameters that they need to, not going out to hang out at night. I know the Seahawks had an undrafted kid that tried to sneak a girl in, using a Seahawks hoodie, and he got cut the very next morning.
Right.
And so I think the teams overall, the organizations overall are doing a pretty good job of just when they see something happening, taking care of it right away, reporting it right away. So I would like to think, I would like to be an optimist, like I usually am, that while it may get a little bit worse, the fact that it's still only at 7 so far is a major positive. And so, I said this with MLB too. They expanded out the rosters in terms of the taxi squads and the bench and the practice squads for NFL for a reason, to be able to cope with, in case a few players, 4, 5, 6 players from a single team get COVID and have to be isolated. They've provided the opportunity for that to be the case and still keep games going. So, while cases may rise a little bit, I think, like I said, overall, I think the NFL has done a good job of handling this so far. While cases may rise a little bit, as of right now, that's not something I'm worried about.
Yeah, but meanwhile, from what I understand, they said if you want to exchange jerseys, they can do it through the mail, number one. And now the coaches are going to get fined, I believe, if they don't have a mask on at all times. So I don't know how the Clear Shield works out, but I can see them tightening. Rick, some thoughts about the 7 positive virus cases thus far?
Well, I'm surprised it's that low, but, this is the NFL, and the NFL is not always very, let's say, truthful.
Right.
So it could be a whole bunch that, and they're only going to say 7. They're never going to say there's a big old outbreak of it because it's all about money for them.
Right.
I know some of these teams are thinking about having fans, which I think is crazy. So if the NFL says it's 7, honestly, I don't believe it's probably higher than that. They're just not going to tell people about it.
Well, interesting perspective. All right, Ryan, you're going to have Cam Newton in your background when New England comes into Seattle to take on the Seahawks and Russell Wilson. What are your thoughts about Cam Newton's first act against the Miami Dolphins? I thought he didn't look too bad for his first week.
Yeah, he didn't look too bad. It helped that he was going up against the Miami Dolphins. So it'll be interesting to see how he does against a defense that seems to have improved in Seattle over last year. While they still let Matt Ryan throw for 450 yards, part of that was they were up by so much they were just playing they were playing prevent mode basically, and allowed a whole bunch of yards. So I think it'll be interesting to see if the addition of Jamal Adams and how that affects the pass rush more against a more established team. Obviously, Atlanta struggled a lot last year. They made a decent comeback at the end of the year. I think they went 6-2 over their last 8 games, sort of bring their record to 7-9. But I don't know. I think that New England will bring a little bit more of a opposition to Seattle. So it'll be interesting to see how Seattle can disrupt Cam, how their defense can kind of make things a little difficult on him. I mean, Cam Newton didn't have to throw it very much last week in order to get the win. I think he ran for 2 touchdowns, I believe.
Right.
I think with the way that the Seahawks have set up their defense, it's a little bit different than what they've been doing the last couple of years. They're no longer just running a full 4-3 base, which they did on like 85% of plays over the last 2 years. Because of adding Jamal Adams, they're moving to more of like a 2 linebacker, nickel and dime formations a lot more. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects Cam Newton with running, and if they can force him to throw the ball. Because I think if they can force Cam Newton to throw the ball, game over. The Seahawks are going to win that. Because Cam Newton has never been a very prolific thrower. His career completion percentage is well under 60%. I think he's only had 1 year, maybe 2, where he was actually above 60%. So, and so I think that if the Seahawks can keep him from running too much and force him to pass the ball, I think the Seahawks will be in very good shape.
Now, what I liked about that game in Miami, though, versus Miami, I did like seeing Cam Newton alongside of Josh McDaniels with the old clipboard going over it, because if Josh McDaniels, to me, is the wild card in the whole thing. Excellent offensive coordinator, has been for a long time. I know at some point he'll get another head coaching job. And from what I hear up in New England, Cam Newton's been a good soldier. He's done everything the right way and is bought into that system. And I think New England feels that not only they're happy that they got him cheap, but they got a proven quarterback that, I think that he has a halfway decent year, that he could end up signing a multi-year deal with the Patriots. I really have a gut feeling that relationship might work out better than we think. What are your thoughts, Rick, about Cam Newton up in New England?
Well, I've seen Cam Newton play here many, many times with the Panthers, and I'm just I'm not sold on him.
Okay.
If they can get him to throw the ball, like Ryan said, it's over. He's not a very good thrower. He's not very accurate. His footing is terrible, so he has to run. I mean, he ran for like 70-something yards, which was a new Patriot record, but Tom Brady's not much of a runner, so you got to give all the credit to Bill Belichick. I think right now it's 1 Bill Belichick, 0 Tom Brady. And Bill Belichick is just a great coach, and if he can get somebody's career to get rejuvenated, it could be someone like Cam Newton. But am I sold on him? Absolutely not. So we have to see what happens with him, but we have to see how healthy he is. He hasn't played for like the last 2 years, and he looked good, but he was against the Dolphins, so I'm not really sold on Cam Newton. But if they get him to throw the ball, then that's his Achilles heel, is his footwork and his accuracy.
Yeah, I want to go over last week's game with the Cardinals and the 49ers. I think a really interesting game there nearly was the Cardinals walked into San Francisco, pulled out a 24-20 win. Kyler Murray, the story in this contest. Kyler Murray, when you think about it, okay, 26 of 40 for a touchdown. He was sacked twice, but he had 230 yards. And then on the ground, he's 13 rushes for 91 yards, along with a touchdown, okay. But how about DeAndre Hopkins, 14 receptions for 151 yards? I mean, that to me is unbelievable. Ryan, I mean, this dynamic worked out pretty well the first week, and I have a feeling that the Cardinals are in for some good football.
Yeah, obviously, there were questions when DeAndre Hopkins went to Arizona whether or not he was going to get as much work in Arizona with having Christian Kirk, with having Larry Fitzgerald, with having solid running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield, just how many targets he was going to get per game. And then when they started off with 14 catches on 16 targets in the first game, basically DeAndre Hopkins is going to be doing the same thing in Arizona that he was in Houston. I think there's more. I think other than quarterback, I think there's a couple better surrounding players in Arizona, and we're still waiting to see what kind of defense Arizona is going to have. I know that they've drafted very well on the defense over the last couple of years. Guys like Budda Baker. They drafted Simmons this last year. So, overall, I think that DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to be putting up similar numbers to what he always has as long as he stays healthy. He is that good, and Kyler Murray targeting him is only going to mean good things for the Arizona offense, and bad things for most of the NFC West.
All right, so let's go to the other big component in that trade. David Johnson for the Texans. He had 11 rushes for 77 yards, and he did have a touchdown. So as much as that trade appeared to be lopsided at the beginning, what are your thoughts about the production of David Johnson for the Texans?
I loved it.
Did you?
I've been a fan of David Johnson. Seeing what he has done over the last couple years, being injured and just not being able to get healthy. Everyone keeps saying that, he's no good, he doesn't run well. I mean, the strength of his game never was running the ball. It was always his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. That's what made him so dangerous. His career average in terms of yards per carry is right around that 4.1, I believe. But when he gets the ball in open fields, catching the ball, he's absolutely dangerous. Now, I think the thing that worried me most about him going to Houston in terms of his running ability was how good was the offensive line going to be. And they managed to open up some holes well enough for him against that Kansas City defense. They did a good job last year of stopping up Derrick Henry in the playoffs, that he was able to find the holes to work them, to lower his shoulder. He didn't look hesitant. And so I was really excited to see that. I think that he could put up a decent year in fantasy this year. Again, as long as he stays healthy, he's obviously the number one guy in terms of the running backs in Texas. So I was very excited to see him put up a touchdown and a decent amount of yards in his first game in Houston.
We're going to talk one more game last week, and I only mention this because a brand new stadium opened. The Dallas Cowboys opened up the LA Rams' new place, SoFi Stadium. I didn't have a chance to watch a lot of that game. I got really busy, but I did pop in here and there. Any early impressions of that new stadium? Remember Jerry built a place for over $1 billion, and now the Rams spent $5 billion on their place. Rick, this is your old neck of the woods out in Inglewood, my friend. Have a chance to see that game?
It's a gorgeous stadium.
Yeah,
it is beautiful. It's just, I think both of these stadiums, the one in Las Vegas, are just spectacular. I mean, these are like state-of-the-art stadiums. And I think they're great. My brother lives out there not too far away in Carson, California.
Right.
And he would tell me that the stadium is beautiful. Said the pictures don't do it justice. And that's a great place for the Rams and for the Chargers. So, they've been wanting a new stadium for a very long time. That was one of the reasons why the Raiders moved back to Oakland, because they wanted to get a new stadium, and they never got one in Oakland, so they moved to Las Vegas and got one. But it's a gorgeous stadium, and it's just the pictures don't do it justice.
Yeah, I actually took a virtual tour of it. I wasn't there, but a virtual tour when I was in L.A. In January, and from what I could tell, it was a dynamo. It really was. Ryan, any thoughts about the Rams' new $5 billion palace?
It's a pretty stadium. For me, I don't get too excited about the stadiums, to be honest. I mean, having grown up in Seattle, where we had the Kingdome, which was basically just a cement tomb where the games were played. And I mean, I like this. Stadium is very, very beautiful. I like the big screen going all the way around to make it easy to see everything. For me, that doesn't win games. It makes for a cool experience, and with how much games cost, it makes it hard for me to get excited about stadiums.
Completely understand. You talk about the Kingdome. I lived in the Pontiac Silverdome, so I know exactly what you're talking about there. In fact, the stadium out in Arizona, Candy and I took a tour of the Cardinals place, and that actually reminds me of what the Las Vegas Raiders did do, and they had that surface that rolls back and forth, so that'll obviously open up on Monday night. So another Monday night showcase with no fans, but a stadium. So what are your thoughts about New Orleans Saints against the Las Vegas Raiders? The Raiders ended up going into Carolina. I believe they got a win last week, didn't they? I believe so.
Yep,
they have a chance to go ahead and get another one in their new facility. Any thoughts about it from either of the two of you? About this game, the Raiders?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Rick.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I think that it was definitely. There's still a lot of rebuilding going in Carolina. It's going to take a little bit. I know that they focused their draft on the defense, and they added some pieces to the offense in free agency for Carolina. But they obviously need to address stopping the run game. They were one of the worst. They were one of the worst at it last year. Well, at least in terms of giving up fantasy points to running backs. So that's not just yards, but that's also touchdowns. They gave up a lot of production to running backs last year, and that started off the same way this year with Las Vegas coming in and Jacobs scoring 3 touchdowns on 93 yards. So I think that Carolina will be somewhat competitive. Just because of the offensive weapons that they have, with having DJ Moore. Obviously, they've got Christian McCaffrey. Right. Robbie Anderson provided a little bit of an explosion on offense, which was good to see. They have Curtis Samuel, who can run the slot, although I think he's getting left farther and farther behind in terms of this offense. I think that they'll play pretty well. I don't see them winning a lot of games, but I think that they will put up a fair amount of points just because of the offensive weapons they have. I just think their defense is going to give up a whole lot.
Now, on Monday night, though, you got the Saints and the Raiders. At least I know that'll be a whole lot better game to watch, if for nothing else, looking at the stadium. And, of course, the Saints are considered one of the favorites to win their division with Brady in it. So what are your thoughts about the Saints and the Raiders?
That could be a decent game. I'm not totally sold on the Raiders defense either. I think that the New Orleans team is a little bit more talented on both sides of the ball, especially with how well they were able to stop up the running game of Tampa Bay and also the passing game. Las Vegas does not have a killer passing game, especially considering that they're running out 2 rookies as their starting wide receivers, and a second year, a rookie or a second year guy in their slot. And so I have trouble really putting a whole lot of trust in what the Raiders could do in this game. I think that New Orleans should pretty handily take care of this game. Okay.
And I have one college note I want to mention, one in Rick Curti's backyard, okay? It just came in. University of North Carolina's game against UNCC has been canceled due to offensive line being depleted. Rick, I'll let you comment on this. how disappointing was it for UNCC not to play their game against the Carolina Tar Heels?
Was that again? I'm sorry. Can you repeat it again?
Absolutely. The University of North Carolina, Charlotte, the 49ers game against UNC, Tar Heels got canceled because the offensive line was depleted. So the 49ers missed a golden opportunity to play against the Tar Heels. I know it's important for the biggest city in the state of North Carolina to have played the Tar Heels, an interstate game. It's disappointing that an offensive line being depleted, COVID-19 reared its ugly head. But how important was it, or how disappointing was it that the game with the 49ers got canceled against the Tar Heels?
I think it's devastating. UNCC, I know, got put on the map last year when they went to their first ever bowl game. College football is brand new in Charlotte. They've only had the team for for the past this is their 7th year.
Right.
It's a really big university. It's huge. They got a great head coach in Will Healy, who I think could be like the next Urban Meyer. He's that good. I just hope we can keep him for a couple more years. Right. We already know he's going to go to somewhere bigger and better. But I think it hurts for the university. I think it hurts for Charlotte. It could really put us on the map.
Right.
When people talk about UNC, they're thinking about Chapel Hill or somewhere else, But we actually do have a great university here in Charlotte, and it's just unfortunate that COVID again, was a factor and all that. And but they'll be fine. I really think they have a really good team this year.
It's a guaranteed game that they lost, number one. That doesn't help the pocketbook at all. And in 1987, when I worked in that area, working with the Gastonia Rangers, I did have a chance, Ryan, tour the University of North Carolina Charlotte campus, and it indeed is
beautiful.
A nice place. It is a good place. So just thought I'd get that in there since we had a Charlotte guy on the broadcast. So with that said, okay, Rick, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know how to get a hold of you. Ryan, you'll follow suit. Then Rick will give his words of wisdom for COVID, and I'll give out our information. Go ahead, Rick. Lead it off.
Our website is www.charlottebats.com. My email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB. I'm also on there at Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm also on Instagram at Charlotte Bats, and I'm on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball. And I'm also on LinkedIn at Rick Curti, Curti. You can always contact me on any of those social media websites.
And you can also find Rick Curti on the South Florida Tribune. I have his photo up there. He helps us a lot in our social media department, and we're forever grateful for that. Ryan Skolrud, you have a lot going on, and I'm glad that we've formulated a partnership that goes beyond just fantasy football. Eventually, I'm going to bring you on here with other sports. How's that sound, Ryan? Like that idea? Bring some other people on here with you, mix up, and really give Skull King Sports the publicity it rightfully deserves. Go ahead and let everybody know about your operation, please.
You can find us on SkolkingSports.com. We cover pretty much anything most of the major sports as of right now. Right now we cover, we obviously do fantasy football analysis, which this last week, just to kind of brag on my staff, we had a pretty decent year. For those of you who are in fantasy football and follow maybe fantasypros.com, the website, they have every year they do an accuracy contest, between a whole bunch of analysts from anywhere from Yahoo, CBS, and all the smaller and mid-range fantasy football analyst websites. We actually had one guy that would have finished, he's not part of it, but would have finished in the top 20 with how accurate his rankings were. One guy in the top 30. I ended up finishing 40th overall out of 160 analysts. So we had a pretty good week last week. You can get our fantasy rankings again at SkolkingSports.com. We also cover just NFL in general, Major League Baseball. We've got a couple NBA writers, NHL. We cover NASCAR, Formula One, IndyCar. And right now we've got a guy covering the U.S. Open. So we do a pretty good job of spreading out the love in terms of the sports right now. We're always looking to cover more. So again, you can find us at SkolkingSports.com. You can find us on Twitter at SkolkingSports. You can find us on Instagram, SkolkingSports. You can also find us multiple different spots on On Facebook, we have multiple different discussion groups and pages. You can, again, look up Skull King Sports, SKULLKING Sports, on Facebook, and you will find us in many, many, many places. So if you want to get a hold of me, you can actually email me at ryan.skolrud@skullkingsports.com.
Well, like I said, we enjoy the partnership that the South Florida Tribune and Skull King Sports have had. We look forward to continue building it, both not only the broadcasting side, but in numerous platforms as well. So we're always very appreciative of Ryan of everything you do. In terms of this, you're listening to Fantasy Football. My name is Scott Morganroth. Tonight, Ryan Skolrud. Obviously, we do this. Rick Curti is doing it tonight. Rick Curti will have a new role as he joins Mel Farr in the Sports Exchange next week. Xavier McKnight will come to this platform. Either way, one thing I love about this operation is we have a lot of great interchangeable, excellent moving parts. I'm very proud of everybody connected with the operation. With that said, our broadcast can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll say it again. You can find this broadcast on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Other ways to follow us, Twitter at Tribune South, and that's Twitter at Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, you can follow the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, which we're going to be doing a lot of these broadcasts moving forward. Please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Everything's pretty much just about everything's going to be going visual. We're looking forward to seeing one another and being able to make sure that we bring this and combine the visual and the audio. Of course, the audio will always still be brought on the other platforms I aforementioned. Website, www.southfloridatribune.com. All of our content is there, as well as the broadcast. Email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth. Just feel free to connect with me there. And I'll be more than happy to connect with you. Look forward to meeting new friends and new connections. You guys do a great job. Really enjoy doing the broadcast with everybody we have here. I'm proud of each and every one of you. Rick Curti, you're going to end the broadcast tonight by telling people what they shouldn't be doing related to COVID-19. Go ahead, Mr. Curti.
Well, right now we're close to 200,000 deaths right now. There's a lot of false information going around about masks. Folks, please wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands. Please stop going to big parties, big gatherings, beaches, flooding everything, yelling at people for wearing masks or whatever. Just use some common sense. There's just a lot of people out there who are being very selfish right now and not doing the right thing. And, we need to unite as a country, and we need to beat COVID-19.
I should also point out Rick Curti is the co-host of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk on Monday night. So Rick Curti has his hands in a lot of different cookie jars, right, Mr. Curti? With that said, all right.
That's right.
He's called my
utility player. I'm a utility player for South Florida Tribune.
Oh, you are. That's you guys are all great. Proud of every one of you. So meanwhile, with that said, on behalf of Rick Curti, Ryan Skolrud, my name is Scott Morganroth. Thanking you for joining us here, Fantasy Football, and obviously I am the Motor City Madmouth. Don't forget that. And these are my a great co-host. So on behalf of, once again, Ryan Skolrud, Rick Curti, my name is Scott Morganroth. Wishing you a great night. Be safe over the weekend. Enjoy your football, and we will catch you another night. Good night, everybody.